right. I'm excited to be here today with my new friend, Oskar Eichler. So, Oskar, let me give you a quick intro. So, we were both just reminiscing on Fable 5 at the time of recording this, just finally came back online. And so, it's if there's any mistakes here, we can blame it on AI. But what we got here is Oskar is the founder and CEO of SongStats. It's a platform that has over 10,000 artists and labels that subscribe for real-time insights across 14 different DSPs, including Spotify, Apple Music, TikTok, YouTube, and Shazam. It's fully bootstrapped. They also have an enterprise API that powers major booking agencies and management firms. He's a former COO of 1001 track lists, which grew into the de facto Wikipedia of dance music after founding and selling Arcane, which is the largest music licensing network for DJs on YouTube. Wow. He also grew his first YouTube channel to 1 million plus subscribers under 2 years. That produces as Don't Blink, one of Tomorrowland's Future 4 artists and a top 5 best-selling Beatport artist in 2021. And sounds like he's actually in the middle of a tour right now. So appreciate you taking the time. I'm sure you've got a lot on your plate. So looking forward to having a conversation with you and talking a little bit about SongStats and also the future, your new baby, Social Stats.
That's right. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm on tour right now. I'm in Ibiza right now in this moment. But yeah, it's exciting. Europe in the summer, it's been hot, but it's awesome. So.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I'm back in Orlando now, and it is quite hot. Ibiza. Did you take a pill there?
We did. We might take one tonight. We'll see.
Oh, good stuff. Well, yeah, man, I would love to dive in and hear a little bit about the origin story of SongStats and this new. How you discovered the platform in the first place.
Yeah, so let's talk about SongStats first, since that's where it all started. And that's basically a music data analytics app that sounds more boring than it is, where artists...
I actually think it sounds really exciting. Although I'm the weird kid in high school that liked math. So to throw my opinion out of the window.
The more interesting description would be your little manager in your pocket, I would say. Like, it's basically, we wanted to make it fun and cool to know everything that's happening with your music. It's very selfish, honestly. I'm using it every day for my own artist project. And, you know, when we started it, that was about 8 or 9 years ago at this point, we really tried to pull together the data from Spotify, from Apple Music, from YouTube, from Beatport, and make it sort of actionable. That was always the main goal with SongStats, is not to just look at a graph, retroactively and be like, oh, okay, I guess that's how it performed, but more like during your release cycle, while you are trying to promote your latest track or your tour, to really let you know, hey, this is what's happening. This is where your audience is located. You just got added to this big editorial playlist. This creator on TikTok just used your song in one of their videos, or this store on Beatport just featured you. So all of those little accomplishments is what drive your success and maybe also your motivation, right? So as an artist, it's super interesting, of course, to keep track of. And we basically aggregate all of that in one place. We have a mobile app, so you receive push notifications. And then we have a big desktop dashboard. And as you mentioned, there's even an enterprise arm now, since we have so much data. It's really interesting for booking agencies, for distributors, for management firms to better understand what their artists are doing, maybe where could they go on tour, or maybe where should they focus more on the advertising side. So there's a lot that's happening. And of course, now we're also diving a little bit more into AI and into radio tracking. So there's a lot to uncover. I encourage anyone to go into SongStats, any artist or any record label as well, to go into SongStats, look themselves up and discover something new that they didn't know, because I'm sure you find some support or some milestone that you've missed. So, yeah.
Cool. That's so interesting. And, the conversation we've been having even before we started the podcast around AI and Fable, and how, jokingly, it probably knows us better than we know ourselves at this point. It seems like a lot of it comes down to the data, and in order to predict the future, having access to that data can be really helpful. And I really like what you mentioned around your goal wasn't necessarily just to throw a bunch of information at someone so they could feel more overwhelmed than they probably already feel, but to actually give it to them in an actionable way that empowers them to be able to decide what to do that's actually going to move the needle. Yeah, definitely curious to hear more about what that looks like as it relates to predictive intelligence and using AI to basically help, especially for this podcast. There's a lot of independent artists, independent record labels that are kind of taking their marketing into their own hands.
Perfect.
And so I'm curious if you could speak to what you see as sort of the zeitgeist right now, as someone who's both literally living the dream of like touring around the world, playing these shows. You've also created some, incredible companies and built and sold companies. What do you see right now as like the zeitgeist of what are we going to look back at 10, 20 years from now and be like, wow, like this was the moment that X happened in the music industry. And the people who swam along with that wave and got the momentum, those are the ones who ended up getting that big burst. And there's a lot of people left behind who didn't swim along with the wave.
Yeah, it's a great question, to be fair. Like I think, of course, the one wave that's not to ignore right now is AI. I think even in the music space, everyone's talking about it. Some people see it positively, some people see it negatively. I think is inevitable. We talked about, you were just saying Fable 5 right now is the worst it's ever been. That is the truth, that it's a non-stopping tidal wave that just keeps rolling. So in my opinion, of course, the stores right now, like the DSPs, they're trying, to make sure that purely AI generated music is not really taking over the entire ecosystem and also the livelihood of artists, because it is an issue, if someone can just generate a song with one click, upload it, spam basically the DSPs, that creates a lot of costs for them too, because you can just mass produce music at this point. That's, hard to tell at this point if it was created by a human or by an AI. And then apparently, like Deezer, I think, was saying that over 60,000 AI generated songs land on their platform each day at the moment. Imagine what that costs to just host, to like distribute. And then if these artists that our AI artists are not even promoting it, that creates a lot of overhead, right? I know that Spotify already combated this a longer time ago, where they were basically saying any song that makes under 1,000 streams is actually not eligible for distribution of royalties. And what they wanted to do with this and accomplish with it is that artists that actually make music their livelihood, that promote their own music and, do everything that they can to reach over that threshold, they can actually make a living potentially off of it. But if there's all of those, like, I would say, like the long tail of music that has below, let's say, 1,000 streams, there's millions upon millions and millions of songs there that just basically like create so much influx for Spotify, just not in their accounting, but you need to that's all money that could actually go to an artist that actually wants to make it, and that really like is putting all of his heart into it. So in a weird way, we will see a lot, I think, of this, where platforms are going against it. There's going to be some people that are trying to exploit stuff. What I think is that in music production, it's an amazing tool that if you use it smartly, and I think you should, it's basically like the next step, where before there was everything was analog. There was analog synthesizers. You had to record it. If the synth wasn't warm enough, it would sound different the next day, even though it was programmed the same. Like all this like craziness that and all this cost that was involved in making music. Then there was suddenly the digital audio workstation. Ableton came out, Logic, all of those, and those actually basically democratized music to a high degree. Anyone could download Ableton, look up a tutorial on YouTube, and start making cool beats, right? And now it's like the next step to it, where it becomes even more public. Now anyone can download Suno or any other Udio or any other AI and create a song for their son's birthday or something like this in no time, right? It's super cool, but also we gotta be a little bit careful that the artists that really are doing their craft are really not left out of the picture. And I think you should leverage it for creativity. Of course, you can use any AI for songwriting, for having ideas, and then of course also for production, for mastering. Now there's a lot of different tools. I think what's becoming more and more important now, though, for artists is to understand it's music is one side of who you are and what your brand is and how you express yourself. But the other really big factor now that's becoming more and more important is to tell a story, to put out yourself. And that can be in any format. That can, of course, be to say, hey, I'm doing everything analog. I'm doing everything without AI. But you got to put that story out there, right? So that then people understand what you stand for. What is your what is your arc? What is branding, right? Like, what can people connect with? And I think in the age of AI, being real is going to be is sort of like the value that is going to expose itself to be more and more valuable. So I think generally, it's what everyone should pay attention to. I think that is sort of the zeitgeist of today. If you leverage it well, you can get a big advantage, but I think you got to be smart and be real. I think that will be the currency of the future in the internet.
Good stuff. Yeah, it's so good. So what I'm hearing you say is that, both there's a huge tidal wave happening with AI, and it's it's not going anywhere. If anything, it's just this is the worst it's ever going to be, and it's going to become more and more intelligent. And so that's not something to avoid or pretend it doesn't exist, but it's something to use as a tool, but also to be thinking about what are the problems or the issues, or what does that world value? What does it value because it becomes more scarce? And in that way, storytelling and authenticity and reality and being able to connect with a human, those things become more valuable because of the wave of AI. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hopefully,
Crazy,
it doesn't
right?
turn into like a Terminator situation. Yeah, so not to derail this too much, but I rewatched the movie like a month ago, and I'm sure a lot of people are watching it, talking about it, and I actually saw a study that Anthropic did where they found that one way to predict misalignment with their models was if it was trained on Hollywood movies. If it was
All
trained
right.
on Hollywood movies, it was more likely to do things like lie and do evil things that it shouldn't do. So we're literally, like we might unintentionally create the Terminator if we don't create a better story, create a better story that, and better goals and values and whatnot.
I like the outlook of it that, I mean, it all depends what a couple of companies are doing, obviously. The ones that will create a lot of humanoid robots, those will potentially be a risk, right? But I would say that generally an intelligence higher than ours, we look after, or we pretend at least, to look after, the animals or the ones that, are less intelligent than we are. And because they're interesting as well to us. I think maybe at some point an AI will treat us as like a little pet, like keep the human happy. He needs his food, he needs his sex, he needs his sleep, and then he's happy, and send him on vacation or something, right? And but the AI will probably be the one exploring the universe, right? It's much more made for this. Some machine can just fly for a million years and discover another planet. That will never be us in the human biological flesh. So yeah. It's kind of wild.
It's true. I interviewed a guy named Nolan Arbaugh on our podcast probably a year or two ago, and Nolan is the first human to have a Neuralink installed. So he's
Oh, I know.
paraplegic.
Yeah, I saw. That's crazy. Yeah, I
Yeah,
know his story. That's amazing that he was on
it
the
was
podcast.
really cool. I was telling my parents about that one. I was like, oh my gosh, like, and we created the first song ever telepathically with his
Yep,
Neuralink, and
amazing.
that really opened up my mind. I'm like, man, like what kind of world are we going to live in 10 years from now? Imagine if we all had these, interfaces that allowed us to communicate more transparently with each other. Language is obviously amazing, and it's why humanity and communities have formed, but it's also very flawed, and it's easy to miscommunicate, and it's very slow. It's like dial-up internet. But if we had the ability to directly communicate back and forth, it's
Yeah,
just
the
hard to.
bandwidth right now, the bandwidth of speech is quite slow, and speaking is already faster than typing, right? But
Mm,
thinking often, a lot of relationships and a lot of like business conversations and stuff, I think they get stuck because you don't 100% understand what the other person actually wants or needs, right? If you could just like transfer, like telepathically, easy, right? But
mhm.
might also open up a lot of other things because if you can no longer like lie or stuff like this, I mean, it might be a good thing, but it might also be like a bit of a weird thing. So who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah. I think that there's some stories that have sort of turned over that stone of, is it a three body problem? Like the aliens, like they can't lie.
Yeah.
It is interesting. I think about that quite a bit too, because it seems like this is far off, like sci-fi. But you're the kind of person I'm sensing just based on this conversation. It wouldn't surprise me if you're familiar with Ray Kurzweil or the concept of the singularity. His book, Singularity is Near.
Well, I think the singularity is near. Who knows what to predict anymore? I think right now, so for example, when I'm investing in companies like in the stock market, I'm just looking at how I think the future will look like in, let's say, 5 to 10 years. Like, I
Mm,
think that's my only metric. And then I only invest in a couple of companies where I understand what they're doing. And I think what they're doing is how I would like the future to be. So that makes
mm.
sense. But if you no longer know what the future is going to be like because there's an AI and there's like all this craziness and it's already accelerating to a point where it's going to be harder and harder to predict, then who knows what's going to happen, right? Like at some point it might not be in our hands anymore, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a believer in the singularity is near, that book, and we one of our partners at Modern Musician is a co-founder of Singularity University with Ray Kurzweil and Peter Diamandis, and so we've had quite a few conversations about that. And yeah, information technology is on an exponential curve. It's hard to predict and even just like imagine. Like our brains weren't designed to think in exponentials, but it seems to be what's happening. So 2044, I think, is sort of the year that Ray predicts that we hit the singularity level event.
Right.
Anyways, this stuff is fascinating. I feel like I could talk for 5 hours about this. Maybe
I
we'll
love this stuff. I could talk about forever. Yeah, it's amazing.
Also, I want to make sure that we bring things back to what you're doing with social stats, and I think you refer to it as your new baby here. And so I would love to hear a little bit more about the origin of you creating social stats and how it compares to what you've done in the past, and what your goals are for it. What problem do you think that it solves?
Yeah, for sure. So as we talked about, song stats is sort of the music data analytics side, and what became apparent now also in the age of AI, that everything between releases is just as important for artists. So what we started to do is implement actually like the social services, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. We already had most of them on the Songstat side, where we were aggregating data for music and musicians, but then we never really aggregated it at the post level, like looking at your own profile. It was more at the music level for your own songs. So we felt like actually what we're doing here and all the infrastructure that we've built with Songstats actually can be applicable and really helpful, not just to musicians and labels, but also to anyone else on social media, which is pretty much any creator, any athlete, any actor, any brand, really, any influencer. So we started to work on social stats about 2 years ago, and of course leveraged a lot of the technology we've built for song stats. And yeah, we launched social stats about 1.5 weeks ago. It's really exciting. We're basically now for the first time opening the doors outside of the music world, which is interesting for us, right? Like it's a new venture, and we already have a bunch of subscribers coming in from all different sides of the world and all different niches. But social stats essentially is applicable to any type of creator. And essentially what we're doing is we're aggregating data for all of your social channels. You can connect your Instagram, your TikTok, your YouTube, your Facebook, and we aggregate that data directly from your channels. Similarly to song stats, we give you an activity feed of everything that's happening. Like, let's say someone notable is following you with a lot of followers. Someone important leaves a comment under one of your posts. Let's say one of your posts reaches a new milestone or sort of stands out amongst the rest. All of that is sort of like really cool information that might be helpful for you to understand which content is working, in which direction to grow. We're analyzing, for example, when most of your followers are online, like on which day or which time of the day. So we give you like an optimal posting time. Like when we think like if you post at this moment, you will reach the most amount of people and the algorithm will push you. So there's a lot of like interesting tidbits. And again, we want to make it as actionable as possible, to not just like look at a post retroactively. You could do that, of course, on the platforms themselves, but to really like look out to see, hey, this post is doing particularly well, gets a lot of engagement, and then for you to dive in and analyze, like, okay, is that content format working really well? Was that caption really special, or what's happening here, right? And also you can retroactively look at, for example, stories, which is something like is usually hard, especially on Instagram, to look at it afterwards and see how did that story actually develop in views over the past 24 hours? Was there a big spike around some time or about when you shared something? So there's a lot of like interesting things, and we're of course going to build it out over time. We launched it now in what we call the MVP, and we're happy with where it's at, but we're still looking to build out some cool features that are coming with marketing tools for you to, collaborate and find brands to work with, and more is on the way. Content scheduling and a couple other nice features. So yeah, we're really excited. And of course, all the musicians can use it now. It's included in our bundle. We already had a bundle for Songstats users that combine Songstats with Radio Stats. That's a platform that we launched 2 years ago, where we aggregate radio data across 50,000 stations globally, across Sirius XM, AM, FM radio, and also some TV stations. And now we bundled social stats right into that. So for anyone that already had the bundle, it's basically included for free, and anyone else can upgrade now, and it's a good deal. So you monitor both song data, radio data, and social data all in one package. It's quite great. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on the launch. That sounds really exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a lot of work, honestly, but it's cool. And AI accelerated it. Otherwise, it would have taken us probably another year.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. Cool. So from what I understand, social stats is sort of this layer that takes what you've already built for song stats and applies it to the wider social media landscape. And I'm curious, does it have like a feature around helping you create or plan a content calendar based on, I don't know, like similar types of accounts to you as well? Is that part of the angle for how you're using that? the stats?
Interesting call. It's on the roadmap. So we will call it a marketing tool where we see how you can market yourself more. Marketing tools were not part of the first launch now, the same way that they weren't part of the Songstats first launch, but now we have a lot of powerful marketing tools on the Songstat side, where you can connect with playlists, with creators, sharing tools. There's a lot there. And so we're going to build this out for social stats now in the coming months. We're going to be launching a bunch of cool features, including a content calendar, probably scheduling of posts, generating, good captions that can work. There's going to be a lot, but I don't want to give too much away. We're always being watched by some competitors, so we're going to keep it tight to the chest, but you got a sneak peek of what's to come. Yeah.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense. And it does seem like the best place to start. It makes sense to start with the stats so you understand really what's happening and why. And that could even help to build the right tools, based on what you see is working with the stats.
That's exactly right. Like with Songstats, for example, we were thinking like, okay, should we build another tool to reach out to playlists, for example? There's so many of these already. There's Groover, there's Playlist Push, there's Daily Playlist, there's Submit Hub. And we were thinking like, actually, what makes us special is that we have all this data. We already have this huge playlist database. So what we did instead, we actually worked with all of them and became the de facto search engine for playlists. And now we created a recommendation system that really is smart and finds the playlists that work for you. And then we give you all the contact information. So then you can end up on Submit Hub and submit to that playlist because it was recommended by us. So our niche was always more having all that data available and then creating really relevant recommendations to you based on you, related artists to you, and your genre and your music, right? So with social stats, that will be the same. And in the name, it says social stats. It's not like social push or something like this. But of course, we will get into the marketing side and into, the content creation side. And there will be a lot of cool features coming. Yeah.
Sweet. Definitely curious to know more from an integration standpoint with, I don't know how much you know about Modern Musician or Street Team, but our Street Team platform is really like if Shopify and Patreon had a baby. Mm-hmm. So it's like a CRM platform for artists to collect their lists and their data, to send out emails, text messages. There's what we call journeys, which are our version of funnels and different user paths people can go down. It's really cool. And data and stats are like super important in order to plug in with that. And there's also a social media integration. You can multiply your posts and kind of like repost them. You can create different captions, kind of like CapCut, that go on top of them and do different tests. So it'd be very curious to know, based on all that, if there's like an integration opportunity for us to, you said there's like an API or like an enterprise API. So I wonder if there's something there.
Yeah. So we do offer an enterprise API, which is pretty cool. So if you wanted to inject more data into your platform, that's certainly doable. We work with hundreds of companies at this point that rely on our data, and we're very stable, very open as well to adjust based on business models, to make sure it's beneficial for everyone, because we want to enhance your experience and your users' experience. And that's ultimately, our goal. And we want to empower artists. So generally, the social stats API will work similarly, where we deliver social data, same as the song stats API. Through the social stats API, you can also authorize, actually, the users can authorize their own channels directly, and then you can get even deeper data into your channels. And of course, if your platform is integrated with us and there's some value that you provide to artists, we're also happy, of course, to always feature it. We have a benefits section where we give some discounts to different platforms that the artists can leverage and make use of. So that's always fun. So super happy. I'll be super down if you want to give me a little tour after this, though. So and then I would connect you with Evan, who's doing all of our marketing and all of our API and enterprise onboarding. So. Yeah.
Cool. That sounds great. Yeah, we can definitely continue the conversation. We'd love to hear more about that and also to geek out more about the singularity and all this stuff. Cool. So maybe an interesting thing for folks who are listening to this right now might be some strategic insights or advice based on what you're seeing, both personally with your own music and with the wider platform data as well, in terms of what's working right now. I think obviously this is an ever evolving thing, and what works now may not work a month from now or a few months from now. But if you had to start from scratch, let's say that you are an artist who invested a good amount of time and money to create some amazing music, and you have 3 songs you feel really proud of, but now you walked into the social media landscape and you're like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing here. And it's been a few years and this is intimidating. I feel like I don't have enough time to figure out all this stuff. What would your best recommendation be for them to get started and to start building an authentic community?
Yeah, for sure. I can speak to this pretty well because the project that I'm touring with now, it's called Don't Blink. It's a new project. I mean, new in quotations. We started it maybe 7 or 8 years ago, but I had my other artist project before then. And basically, we started everything from scratch and we did exactly what you just described. We had about 10 tracks ready to go. And then we were just standing there of like, okay, what now? Right. And I think a couple of things really much still apply. I would say the very first rule of any artist right now who wants to make it is learn English. For you, that's normal, but there's a lot of artists like that I meet in Brazil or that I meet in China or somewhere else. And it's really, this industry is all in English. So I think it's the ground of everything, of every collaboration, of every partnership, of any deal, it's English. So I think it's really important, and a lot of people forget this. Then I want to say the second thing is, of course, a good name. Some people can use their own name. If you're a group, you have to, of course, think of a good name. I think we thought of the name Don't Blink. It's kind of we felt very connected with it. There was a story about Ibiza actually with this name where we were at a party that was called Do Not Sleep, and that was the night when we decided we should make a project together. That's Alex and I. We're together.
You did take a pill in Ibiza.
We did take a pill in Ibiza. And that's how Don't Blink was born. And that's also why the distilled eyes were not blinking, you know? So there's a lot of connection with us in Ibiza. That's, I guess, why I'm here right now. But I want to say that like a good name goes a long way because it's recognizable. You can create a lot of branding around it. Make sure that the handles are available, of course, because, you know, and generally, if you're a DJ, I recommend not to put DJ in front of your handle because people are usually searching just for your name, right? Like if they have to search for DJ Don't Blink, it's a little bit harder. And they type Don't Blink and they cannot tag you. It's better to put something like Don't Blink Music if that's still available or something like this is usually better in my opinion. But then of course, so okay, what's next? The next thing I think is branding. That's quite important as well. It's like you need, outside of your music, you also need an identity, like a visual identity. And if you're like a designer yourself, then that's great. Or if you know your way a little bit around with Photoshop, but of course you need a logo, you need a little bit of like a concept. So with us, with Don't Blink, of course, was the eyes, right? Like there's a lot that you can do there. We had like some nocturnal animals before, some eyes, but any like just think of like something that you can resonate with. And I think generally looking at what other artists are doing is great inspiration. Looking at movies, looking at creating sort of like a mood board of how what do you want to represent, right? Like what's like your branding, right? Like do you like The Matrix? Do you like Dune? Do you like, you know, a cyberpunk? Do you like, I know, an old Western vibe, you know? But it creates an atmosphere, right? And that atmosphere is ultimately what dictates like what your cover artworks look like, what your socials look like. And I think then on social media is create like a voice. I think that's, you know, we always now use the same font when we post on a story, for example, with the same effect. So it's recognizable, right? People that click through stories quickly, they immediately see when the story is from us, not just when it's, you know, you don't even need to look anymore that it's coming from us, right? Then I think next would be, and I think that's the most important thing, is to understand sort of like your character and your archetype. That's like, in a weird way now, social media is almost like telling a story and becoming sort of like a movie. It's like your own small movie that people follow along. And the artists that are doing this really, really well, they are basically taking their audience on a journey that spans multiple years where they are really involved in what they're doing, in their story or in, you know, their love life, or they can tell stories. It's a little bit easier if you are a singer because you can actually write songs that resonate. With a DJ, it's usually a little bit harder because you're just making cool beats with some cool pre-drop vocal or something, but you can still create sort of an atmosphere. And so to start this, I would encourage anyone to really dig deep into what's your character, right? Like, are you sort of like a superhero brand? Are you more like a, you know, a rebel, you know, going against the system? Or are you more like a wizard or something like this? You know, there's all this like, and then you brand it more in like this alchemy type of way or whatever, you know. There's a lot of like theory on like how characters are built in movies or in stories or books. So I think that's a really important thing because that will actually dictate everything else that you're doing. So because your story arc will depend on like who you are as a character, right? So let's say that you're a superhero brand, and of course it's about your story, how you made it. Like maybe there needs to be a common enemy, you know, so you define like what that enemy is, right? Maybe don't pick anyone in particular, but maybe like a greater idea or sort of like, let's say maybe people that hate on genres or something like this, right? Like why hate on genres? You know, everything is music, right? Like you could basically portray that as like the enemy sort of, right? Because maybe your music spans a bunch of genres. So then that's like an idea or whatever, right? But you need to have that clear concept, because that will dictate all of your content, your storytelling, your persona, right? And ultimately, if you think about it, like maybe at the beginning now your music gets discovered, let's say on Spotify, right? Let's say Spotify puts you in an editorial playlist. In that moment, someone listens to your music, but they don't recognize who you are. They might just listen to it. And if they repeatedly like listen to you, or maybe multiple tracks, at some point they will recognize the name and they'll be like, oh, actually, this name looks familiar. Who are these guys? And only at that point is when someone actually starts digging deeper into who you are, right? So then they click on it, they see your profile. So already on the profile, this can be make or break, right? Like if you're on your Spotify profile, you should put like a cool photo or maybe a bio, like connect with Spotify for Artists, of course, make sure everything is there. I highly encourage to upload Spotify Canvas, which are these like 7-second loops that play when you listen on the mobile player, and they can really like set a vibe as well. Ideally show yourself, like even on those canvases. Don't just show the labels, 2D animation or something like this. You're promoting the label more than you're promoting yourself, right? Like I think you should promote yourself, like either at a show or maybe shoot a little clip or like a music video or something like this. Doesn't need to be long, just needs to be these 7 seconds, right? And then loops. But it shows who you are and your vibe, and if you're funny or if you're like serious or cool or whatever. So with that, once you have that in place, I think then the next part is like, okay, on social media, you need to like create that story arch, right? Like create like some memes around you that people connect with, or some like flaws that people can connect with, or something like this. But you got to be a little bit personal without giving too much away, right? Like you can still not put everything that who you are in front of the camera, right? Like you can be selective over what you represent yourself with. But in the end of the day, your branding decides everything, because, okay, streams are a part of the business. If you're a music producer, maybe that's the core of everything that you're doing. But if you want to become a performing artist that is touring, that is selling merchandise, where where people are buying tickets, it's so important to tell a greater story and to like suck people in. Because ultimately, if you think about someone wearing your merchandise, if someone wears, let's say, like an AC/DC t-shirt, that tells a lot about their identity. That doesn't mean they just like you. They really identify with what you're doing. And I think that's like the most important thing, that you're authentic and that people know what you stand for and they can trust in your brand, and that brand is what represents them. And then they're happy, to support you, to share you with their friends, to rep your merch, and, to buy the tickets. Ultimately, that's what it comes all about. And I think any artist that you really like right now is doing these things. Like the artists where you would go and watch these shows, look at their social media, see how they're doing it, see what you know about them, where you know this from. Did they give some interviews? Did they, do some YouTube shorts or whatever, where they tell you little tidbits that you connect with? And I think ultimately that's what it comes down to as an artist nowadays. And that's unfortunate, because it's no longer just making music. It's basically being a whole content creator. But that's also where social stats comes into the picture, right? Where it's no longer just about Spotify and Apple Music, but it's much more as well now about TikTok, about Instagram, and about YouTube, and how you present yourself also in front of a camera. I think that's really important. Of course, you could also put on a mask or something, but even that it comes with, creativity and about who you are, and storytelling and branding. And yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there, but I think that's a starting guide, and everyone needs to unwrap that for themselves and figure themselves out. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, good stuff. So to recap, what I'm hearing you say is that really like the most important part of your music career at the beginning is really getting clear on your story and learning to figure out what do you stand for, what are your values. And every good story needs a character, it needs a hero, it needs, that's kind of the heart of a story. Like Harry Potter, it's Harry Potter, and
Yep.
Lord of the Rings as Frodo, and Star Wars as Luke Skywalker. Like they all need a character. And
Yep.
so getting clear on what's your story and what's your purpose? What's the lesson of the story? What's the, who are you? And going deeper into that and creating your brand intentionally around who you are is how you can create a space that the community wants to form, so they can see themselves in the community, in the story, in the identity. And that identity is the most important thing to optimize for at the very beginning.
I would think so, because it dictates everything. It dictates like your branding, your color scheme, like your logo, like everything is around. If you think about, let's say your character type is the Joker, that's a crazy, or like Harley Quinn or something. That's a crazy, you use crazy neon colors, crazy logo, crazy shapes, you like crazy hairstyle or whatever, or let's say your character type is Beyonce or whatever, she's the queen. She's the queen, Jay-Z's the king, and then everything is more royal. Everything is more like big, whatever, fluffy suits and the crown or whatever, and then that's your character type. Like everyone has to figure out who they are. And at that point, that's a journey. And that can develop over time. And also, like different parts of it, it doesn't always need to be the same. Like it can, I think, any artist develops over time. Maybe artists release a new album, and that new album tells a new story, and it's a new chapter. But that's how it goes. And this might lose some fans. Like there's always an album that you preferred earlier. And then as an artist, you need to also move on and develop stuff, right? So I think, and that journey will continue, right? So I don't think you need to get stuck with anything, but I think generally figuring out these little bits at the beginning, or at least having an idea or concept that then gets sort of like more clear over time, is really, really important. And things might just happen by accident. You might just film something funny by accident, and then that becomes your thing. Like who knows, right? So, but yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, and weirdly enough, that's what you need to think of now, not just creating a cool song, though of course that's equally important. I think the music is always going to be the backbone, right? So yeah,
and even informed by the story, right? Informed by who you are and the identity. Like the music is sort of the voice that speaks the identity that people resonate with. So it's of course a major part of everything that you're describing right now as well.
Yeah. And I think one important thing that I also want to say that I just learned maybe, I want to say like a year or two ago, is that like, of course, you're manifesting a lot, right? But a lot of people really get comfortable in the position that they're in. And then they're just like, they're happy where they are. And then they dream of like, I would want to be, the next John Summit, or I would want to be, the next Tyler, the Creator, or something like this. But like the reality is that you got to step up in order to do that. You got to get out of your comfort zone almost every day and climb that ladder, because the moment you stop climbing that ladder, other people will, and you just naturally slide down again. And then you just at this like plateau where you're at. Let's say you're a resident DJ somewhere, you play there 3 times a week or something like this. Like that's your rhythm, and that will drain a lot of energy from you. And then like in the end of the day, if you're going to bed 3 times a week at like 5 a.m. or whatever and drink, yeah, then at some point you're sort of like stuck in that system. We, for example, had a residency for a longer time in Bali, and we completely stopped that residency. And we said like, we're no longer playing where we live. So now we no longer play, we are only there in the studio. And now we play everywhere else but at home, because at home is at home, and we want to make music there and focus and be on like a good schedule and a good routine. And that's much more important, right? So like, I think that's sort of important. And then you really got to look what other people are doing, set like a realistic target, right? Like not like, oh, I want to jump straight here. That might happen if you have a hit. That only happens to like one artist in each genre each year. So good luck. If you are lucky, great. But otherwise, there's a lot of hard work, a lot of networking, a lot of, reaching out to people, collaborating. I think it will open a lot of doors. It's all about knocking on 20 different doors, and then 1 or 2 will open, and then you get another opportunity, and then you take that, right? So yeah, it will continue. And as long as you're able to step that ladder and they're excited and want to push it, we are at a level where other people are already like looking up to us. But of course, we are continuously looking for the next thing. But then you see someone like John Summit, and I just watched this vlog, and he's like, I'm excited to grow even further. And it feels like he's already at the absolute peak right now. But no, he's already looking for the next big thing. Now he's doing his own festival and doing the next big thing. And it's pretty impressive, what you can build. And at some point you also need a team. But that's another story. At that point, at the beginning, just find a good friend that believes in you, and that wants to help or something, that will be the first big step, right? So yeah.
Good stuff. Cool. Well, Oskar, man, it's been fun connecting. I feel like we've ventured some interesting territory, both in terms of AI in the future, as well as the fundamentals of character development and storytelling, which is probably the most important thing that we can do, to prepare us for this future of AI and what's real and what's not. So yeah, I appreciate you being here on the podcast and being able to speak as someone who's both literally living it and doing it, as well as creating platforms that help empower other artists. So thank you for being here. And for anyone that's listening or watching this right now who is interested in checking out social stats or song stats, what would be the best place for them to go to connect more?
Easy. Songstats.com, socialstats.com. We got the domains. It's easy enough. Or just search for it. And then, yeah, check out both platforms. You can follow us, of course, on Instagram or anywhere else. And yeah, maybe send us a message, or if you need tips and tricks, I'm sure there's going to be other amazing guests on here. So yeah, hell yeah. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, like always, we'll put all the links in the show notes for easy access. And Oskar, thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thanks. Let's go.
Yeah. Let's go. Was that a dab that I saw?